Nice to have you back with us. We've piled the guests in today, so we're all having to hold our breath so we can all fit into the studios. Joining me from left to right in no order of particular importance, Kizito Okechukwu, who is the executive head of SEA South Africa. Kizito is an old guest of the show. Jon Foster-Pedley, who's the director of Henley Business School, and also Riaan Steenberg, who's the director of global operations at Regenesys Business School. Gentlemen, good day. We're talking about entrepreneurship, and this comes out of your MBA thesis, which I was reading through day before yesterday. And this is exactly what you were looking at, is how education assists entrepreneurs. And the one thing that really touched a nerve is you likened the link between the higher education facility and the entrepreneur to the parent-child link. Is it honestly that close?
I think it's more like, so I was looking at the entrepreneur ecosystem, because I believe that when we grew up in a community. There are agents of socialization that actually engineers our growth. So when I talk of agents of socialization, I mean the family, the schools, the religious community, our local community, and a few others that also contribute to this. So, and the government actually, and business. So the thing is, the entrepreneur grows up in this environment. So this environment actually engineers or actually says who becomes an entrepreneur in future or who doesn't. Because I think especially the family and school. So the family also has a great role to play here. So when the child grows up, the learning that occurs from the parents, from the mom and the dad, and also from the school also, this actually assists to bring up a child to become an entrepreneur in the future.
Well, that's a pretty hectic situation to find yourself in, Jon, because you suddenly have a whole host of people who you don't know from a bar of soap arriving at your school, and you've got to be the parent.
Well, that's very interesting. We're a very strong believer in adult education. I think one of the things that happens throughout education is if you don't watch out, you sit there with your hands out waiting for pearls of wisdom from the great guru of knowledge, and you just are the parent-child relationship. The moment you get to an MBA environment, it's an adult education. You want to tussle and fight and talk, and it's quite a big transition for people to go from their conditioning to be in a school child education into andragogy, which is adult education. And when you're working with entrepreneurs, one of the great things you've got to do is encourage people to think for themselves and build their own theories, not just take theories from somebody else, because entrepreneurs learn in action, and they have to learn quickly in action. So the education system, and I agree with you, the education family system has a lot to do with building confidence, not just in yourself, but in your ability to think and experiment. And I think that's a lot to do with entrepreneurial success.
Riaan, are you able to identify entrepreneurs? When they come and register with you, or early in their career with your business school, are you able to say, okay, that guy is the sort of bloke who we reckon could run out and do his own thing?
It's interesting, and I think Jon will concur with me that at Regenesys and in the private higher education space, we tend to attract and foster entrepreneurship. But I think it's a severe lack of, in the public sector, for there to be entrepreneurship education. So we tend to attract entrepreneurs. We have entrepreneurship clubs, we have entrepreneurship support structures within our university, in our business school, because we believe that only by creating a safe space in which people can really experiment with ideas, to prototype their ideas, to find support on like-minded people, do they tend to build an attitude towards risk that encourages entrepreneurship. I think the average BA student wouldn't be encouraged to go through entrepreneurship or to think entrepreneurially. I think in business schools we are very lucky, and in fact it's our duty to teach people entrepreneurship. And I think we do that at Regenesys quite well. But it's not a simple thing. You don't somebody pitch up and you say, well, okay, we think he's an entrepreneur, go sit in this corner with a bunch of other people that are like-minded. I think everybody has a journey, and higher education amplifies your desire to actually be that entrepreneur.
Okay, well, then let me throw it back at you then, Kizito. Despite the fact that I haven't done an MBA. I'm one of the few people in my group of friends, I don't think, who has done an MBA.
We can sort that out.
I did attempt a BA, which I've been told now doesn't mean I'm an entrepreneur. But how do you identify those people then? And what do they need? Because I can understand, as Jon says, you've got to create this environment where people are prepared to take risks. They're prepared to have a go at each other and say, wait, hang on, okay, that's your theory, I don't agree with it. How do you identify these people? Because we need to start identifying them and fast-tracking them.
I think it's also important to note that it doesn't mean that you must have a higher education before you can become an entrepreneur. It doesn't mean that.
Yeah.
So, because if I say that, then people will throw back a question to say, what of guys like Richard Branson, like Bill Gates, and so on. But what we are saying is that higher education is actually is actually important for you to become entrepreneurs. So let's take, for instance, I interviewed 30 entrepreneurs, and 80% of them concurred with me to say that they have actually some sort of higher education. And around 70% of them had some higher education before they started their business. But majority of them, like 60% of them, had diplomas only before they started their business. So what we're looking at here is just to look at the importance that higher education puts into your business. And the interesting part is also most of them that studied most of them that had some sort of education, whether certificate or diploma, they have a business in that same field that they studied at. So let's take, for instance, someone that studied public relations. They had a public relations company.
Okay.
So it is important also to know that the sector or the subject that you choose to study in school advises the kind of business that one actually starts. And I will end it off by saying that David Kibbe also said, our institutions of learning also should also be remodeled to produce employers instead of employees, because our institutions currently can teach people about entrepreneurship, but are they teaching people for entrepreneurship? So we need to ensure that people pass through entrepreneurship and also allows entrepreneurship to pass through them.
Okay, that raises two questions then. Firstly, and I'll throw this one at you, Jon. It's all very well sitting back as a business school waiting for people to come to you to study. But surely part of your business, of doing your business, is to actually identify those entrepreneurs as well.
Yes, I mean, I often think about what is a business school for. You know, it's certainly not to create programs you sell so people come and get diplomas and they sit in the corner office. A business school must develop the skills that build businesses, that build a country. So our job at a business school is focused on getting practical skills. So the one thing is to identify entrepreneurs, but it's a bit like what Picasso said about creatives. All people are born artists, they just lose it when they're educated. You know, so we confuse education with intelligence, particularly in South Africa, I think, and particularly in developing countries. Just because you're educated doesn't mean you're intelligent. In fact, we start to think that being a professor is something supreme. It's a bit, you know, if you're a surgeon, just because you're a research medical professor doesn't make you a great surgeon. I mean, academic knowledge helps, but there are many other sorts of knowledge. It's practical, applied knowledge you need. If we're good in academia, we should be servant academics, helping people develop those skills, and that knowledge should help people like you get confidence and try things out. So part of what we do is not just identifying entrepreneurs, like here he is, he's a fantastic entrepreneur, and here's another one, here you. But no, it's just saying you're an entrepreneur inside. A bit like cynical people, they're just passionate people who've been disappointed once too often. So, you know, non-entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs who've just been disillusioned once too often. Just recover that, remold them, give them confidence, be experimental in the way you teach, confidence building. I mean, at Henley, we launched an MBA for the music and creative industries last night. And so we're trying to get those skills of working with creatives into mainstream education, because the future of our country isn't digging things out of the ground and selling it, it's beneficiating, and these these higher sorts of skills like design and media, which help us grow economies and become confident and be internationally visible and build brands. So those are the sort of things that entrepreneurs must do. And that starts, I agree with you, it starts at school. It starts at school and it starts in us, the way we believe about ourselves.
How important then is it to take what Kizito was discussing? Instead of you putting together models and saying, this is what we offer you, finding out what's needed and seeing what you can offer in return. I mean, that must be a vital aspect of running a business school.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what happened with us at Regenesys, is that we got so many requests for mentors. Because we were started by entrepreneurs and we're doing entrepreneurship, and we've always had it in our curriculum, and it's something that's quite dear to us. We got so many requests for mentorship that we put it together. And we built an entrepreneur club. That sounds quite blasé, but that turns out to be an explosive forum in which people are sharing ideas, getting things going, linking with each other in terms of business, profiling their business. Because where do you go to? You're an entrepreneur. You've got businesses. Where do you go to speak to people about staff? You can't speak to your staff. Okay. So you want to speak to other entrepreneurs. Okay. So they sit around the table and they share their issues, they share their experiences, their ideas, and somebody sits there and says, you know what, that works well with this idea. And that's part of a business school's role, is we must become a networking platform on which people can share ideas, test it, experiment with it. But also, the higher education in general, we all want to employ labor that is well educated, and that's a very key kind of breeding ground in terms of saying we need entrepreneurs to lead, but we also need people that have got the skills to work.
No, you can have so many chiefs, but you need Indians as well.
So, and if you look at case studies in history, Silicon Valley, the Japanese Karitsus, and they all centered around a university-type infrastructure where people were sharing knowledge, sharing ideas, sharing patents, sharing research that led to the foundation of Google and those types of things. But they also had access to labor then to make sure that those ideas work. And my question really in South Africa is if we have that kind of thinking right now. I don't see it in the public institutions. I see it in the private institutions to some extent, but I don't think there's enough of it. And I think what makes Kizito's observation so powerful is that he's saying, you know what, it is that whole infrastructure from early childhood development straight through to where you end up doing your MBA, that's going to determine if you're going to take that plunge, if you're going to be brave enough and really build a big industry like Jon is saying.
But it is daunting when you start looking at higher or adult education. I mean, education on its own is a daunting thing to get involved in. Chatting with Kizito Okechukwu, the executive head of SEA Africa, Jon Foster-Pedley, who's the director at Henley Business School, and Riaan Steenberg, who's the Director of Global Operations at Regenesys Business School. We're looking at business schools, higher education, adult education. It is, as I was saying going into the break, a daunting thing to look at. I've hit 50, and I must admit, I've thought to myself, should I don't know, go back to varsity, go and study something else? It is one of those things trotting around in my head, but the thing that is stopping me from doing it is I'm going, last time I was at university was half my age ago. I don't even know if my brain can cope with it. A lot of people must be in that situation.
Yeah.
How do you overcome that?
I think, just like you said, education is a very daunting task. And so you're looking at two things, the issue of time and money also, whereby someone will say, do I really have to sacrifice my time to go through the process of an MBA or of further education? And do I also have the resources in terms of money? Do I have the money to fund my education myself? So I think it's more like, it goes back to that ecosystem I was talking about.
Yeah.
So the ecosystem whereby I'm saying that from early childhood, because from early childhood, your environment shapes you. And once you grow up in an environment that is telling you that education is important and you must have education before you can do this. I remember in my primary school, maybe it was abusive, but they said, speak English or remain silent. So there were things that they were telling you then, that you must get educated, you must get your master's, you must get your doctorate. And I believe that those kind of foundation shapes you when you grow up, that even if you don't have the money, you will say, okay, how can I loan some money to fund my education? But no doubt it's a daunting task, and the models you go through also throughout your time in studies is also hectic. So I think it needs a lot of commitment, willingness, enthusiasm to learn, and focus.
Jon, are you being delivered the students that you need?
You know what, that's a really interesting question. I've been teaching in South Africa now for, 18 years? And when I first started, you get a class, mostly white people, and a few black Africans sitting there. And typically, they would be quiet and reticent. Now we've gone from 20% black Africans to 62% in the last 5 years. And you've got this people who are extraordinarily intelligent, coming into their own, starting to feel that they are. I mean, the future of Africa is our people. You know, we mine the resources, but the real resources are our people. And there's something happening now where people are starting to believe in their own intelligence, their own capability. I think some of their history, I mean, I've been to Nigeria a few times, it's a vibrant environment. And I think some of that history is dissipating now, and people are really starting to get it, that they're bright, they're intelligent, they're capable, they're transnational, and they can learn and they can achieve. Africans are easily as good as other nationalities. On our MBA, for example, where it's an international one, so they pass exams at the same level as people in China or in France, whatever, and it's assessed by the same people. We're doing extraordinarily well. So what you're seeing happening now is this resurgence of talent and confidence happening, which is brilliant. Our future, my children, your children's future, which if you have them, is in a common education system, a common goal to try and build an Africa that we all believe we should be part of. And education is central to that. And so we talk about entrepreneurship as if it were a thing. It's more like a quality, like creativity. It's a quality. It's a complex thing, something that happens as a result of a number of conditions that are set up. You can't work on I can't come to you and say, be entrepreneurial or else, because you just won't be. You know, like being creative, it emerges from a set of conditions you set up for your students or the people around you. So it's absolutely what Kizito is saying. And I think all of us as educators, you know, we're competing institutions, but actually we're completely together to try and develop, you know, the national interest, which is great education.
Okay, that's all very well, and you're being all touchy-feely, and we can possibly hold hands after the show and sing Kumbaya together.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the reality is you are being delivered students who have come out of, and I'm talking about here specifically in South Africa, that have come out of a schooling system which not in all cases is developing the student that you want at a matric level.
I find that interesting, and while I think we can dwell on that, is to sit and say, what attitude are we building for that student once they leave? Okay, and for me, the concern is right now, I don't see South Africans specifically wanting to be aggressive in the rest of Africa, wanting to be those business leaders, and wanting to go out there and really change the status quo. I think we're very internally focused as a country. And that for me is the sad part of what we are being delivered, because we have to take those people and first break down a full understanding of what is your role in society. You are here to enable these resources, to really take us to that entrepreneurial culture in Africa. While what we are getting is people sitting there with an entitlement mentality, sitting and saying, well, yes, I am smart, but I need to be paid a lot. They want showbiz careers. All of those types of things are what is coming into the system. And what we have to deliver is the future captains of industry for Africa. Because if we don't do it now, there are many, many African countries that are targeting South Africa as we speak. And they will succeed with businesses here. And that's the interesting part, that I think South Africa needs to wake up to the fact that it is now the time to build that entrepreneurial culture. And if we don't take every resource that we have to do it, we will be outpaced by other countries.
But we once again, we're running out of time, but doesn't it sort of come from the top down, where you've got a president saying we need to create 5 million decent jobs? Now, what's a decent job? You know what I mean? It's a job, it's a job, it's a job.
It's a job.
If you've got no money and you've got no work, a job is a job.
Well, can I respond to that? Because that's a very interesting point. I mean, you make the point about, you know, holding hands and singing Kumbaya, but there is a very real issue that education needs two things. It needs competence and it needs rigor. and it needs confidence.
Yeah.
So the traditional models break down confidence. So if you think that building confidence is holding hands and singing Kumbaya, I would say no. You know, building confidence is a critical part of an education system. On top of that, you need rigor. You need rigor in the analytics, you need rigor in sense-making, interpreting, and you need rigor in application. And the whole point about entrepreneurial education is you take people and you put them in the heat of the fight. And that's where you do your learning. And this isn't an easy game. This is a big game. It's tough. And I agree with that. But it means that you still got to do it not in a top-down autocratic way. You've got to do it in an empowering way. And that's essential for our new education
Because
system.
that's what they've got to go out and face the world with.
Exactly.
Now, it's Global Entrepreneur Week coming up 21st of November. You, SEA Africa, are involved. What are you hoping to achieve out of that, Kizito?
We're hoping that entrepreneurs that will come on the day will learn on the power of design. I know Prof mentioned on design. Design is a very important aspect in each and every business and each and every entrepreneur's life. And we're also hoping that they will get to learn, and they will get to learn the Africa business landscape, and they'll get to meet other entrepreneurs, and they will also learn different case studies of struggling businesses that are also on the platform on the day. But most importantly is on Saturday, before the Global Entrepreneurship Week kicks in, also we're launching the Center for African Youth Entrepreneurship, which is targeting kids. So we're talking of people, kids from grade 8 to 11, because we're trying to push in that mindset. We're trying to create that entrepreneurial mindset right from the early stages of childhood development. Because I think, and that goes back to my thesis, what came out from my thesis, whereby I'm saying, we want to make sure that all the agents of socialization, the entrepreneurial ecosystem collaborate to bring out, to develop an entrepreneur. And I'll end it by saying, I don't mean that there must be, that these entrepreneurs must have a business, must start a business. I believe personally that entrepreneur could be a state of mind, and then it could draw down to SMMEs. So entrepreneurs develop something, and then the result becomes SMMEs or so. So it's something we could talk about sometime to see how it could work out, yeah.